Washington, D.C. history page, and soon they will come to our history, mostly ancient, YouTube. So last time that we met, we talked about the end of the Fourth Crusade, and the Fourth Crusade ended with the Venetians and the Crusaders arriving in Constantinople, placing Alexios IV onto the throne, and when he was placed on the throne, he basically was unable to pay the 200,000 ducats that he had promised the Crusaders and the Venetians, and so the Crusaders decided that the city itself was worth more to them than the money that they could have taken, and so they sacked the city to gain that wealth. There's a question here of whether there's a connection between Edessa, the city in what's now modern-day Turkey, the city of Şanlıurfa in modern Turkey, and the city of Odessa in Ukraine. Aside from perhaps the names sounding similar, I don't think that they're related. There's certainly no historical correspondence between the two cities. Odessa is a modern city. It was built by the Russians after they conquered that part of Ukraine. All right. And then once the Crusaders had sacked Constantinople, they ended up setting up a government there. And that government was called by them the Roman Empire. Now, of course, that gets confusing, so historians do not call it the Roman Empire. Historians tend to call it the Latin Empire, you can see on this map. And the Latin Empire, though, was not called the Latin Empire by anybody who surrounded it either. And they refused to call it the Roman Empire because they considered the Byzantine Empire to be the Roman Empire. And this was clearly a usurper state. So they call it the FRANKOKRATIA, or rule by the Franks, right? Kratia is the Greek word for rule, Franco is from Frank. So you ended up having a number of these post-Byzantine states surrounding the FRANKOKRATIA. And so these are the Despotate of Epirus, the Principality of Achaia, the Duchy of Athens, and the Emperor of Nicaea. And all of these sort of surround, if you went in a counterclockwise half-moon shape. And those four states combined with Bulgaria, which was not a former Byzantine state, this is a sort of Slavo-Turkic state, were fighting against the FRANKOKRATIA to control Constantinople. All of these states believed that they were the rightful inheritors of Constantinople. The four post-Byzantine states because that had been their capital, and Bulgaria because they were Orthodox Christian and considered Constantinople the center of Orthodox Christianity. Remember the Hagia Sophia, which is now a mosque, right, was the center of the Orthodox Christian world. That was their Vatican. And so it was located in Constantinople. And because of that, it became that important. Now, the FRANKOKRATIA was established around 1204, and from 1204 to 1230, we had them slowly losing territory to all of the surrounding states until it was pretty much just a Constantinople city-state for about another 30 years. Now, because of the situation with the FRANKOKRATIA, you had the Byzantine Empire making peace with the Seljuk Turks. Because historically, of course, the Seljuk Turks had been the enemies of the Byzantine Empire, and the two of them had fought numerous wars along their shared border. If you look at the map here, the Byzantine Empire is to the north and to the west, of the Seljuk Empire in this area that I'm circling here. And so as the Seljuks were moving further west and conquering more territory, that put them in direct conflict with the Byzantines who were trying to expand. Remember also we talked about, during our second presentation, the wars of John II Komnenos of the Byzantine Empire, who was trying to reconquer most of the territory of Anatolia with varying degrees of success, but that also put him directly against the Seljuk Turks. Now that the Byzantines were the Byzantines represented by the Empire of Nicaea were trying to hold the line in the east and therefore focus on Constantinople, they made peace with the Seljuks, which allowed the Seljuks an unfettered growth and expansion further out. Now, I apologize, this map is in Spanish. I couldn't find the same map in English. And so the capital city here is labeled as Iconio, is the city of Konya in modern Turkish. And it's also represented as Iconium in its Latin, right? So you have this city of Konya, which was really their center. And you can see that as we move towards the 1200s, you have a massive expansion, first into those western territories that you see here, then more into the eastern territories, but most importantly, with the creation of the FRANKOKRATIA and the peace with the Byzantines, they were able to conquer the northern coastal region here and the southern coastal region here. The northern coastal region with the city of Sinop or Sinope was a very important Black Sea port and allowed the Seljuks to trade with the Crimean Khanate. Now, one of the interesting things is that we actually see, this is the only moment in history that I'm aware of where Crusaders and Mongols actually fought each other west and became a nomadic Turkic people. That as nomadic Turkic people, they were accepted by the Ayyubids to be a mercenary. It's Turkic people like you would find in Kazakhstan today. And these Kipchaks were forced further west because of the Mongol conquest. In large numbers, he decides that he is going to buy a large number of these Kipchaks, nearly 1,000 of them, to be his own person. Salah Ayyub begins to fight back against the Crusader state of defeating the Crusaders at La Fourbi. We have Louis IX of France deciding that he wants to lead a crusade, the Fifth Crusade, right? They arrive at Damietta, they besiege the city, but this time the Egyptians are relatively underfunded. The fortress falls. You can see the movement from Damietta to Mansoura down through the Nile Valley, and he got to the city by this, and so they just started digging out the river on their side. King Louis IX couldn't actually cross the river this way, killed him. He allowed 5 Franks to survive, to then go to Louis IX and tell the story. Robert I, of course, was not one of them, sadly, despite that auspicious start. Now, one of the interesting things about the Seventh Crusade that we didn't really discuss, because we were looking at it for a second from the European side, is that the Mamluks had been quite simple. He wasn't alive. What ended up happening is that he died in 1249. And at that point, he was going to be succeeding Egypt. They would lose their political power and they could possibly be killed. So they decided that what they would do is actually take the power for themselves and keep Turan Shah out of Egypt. One of these Mamluk, named Izzeddin Aybak, decided that he would be the one to lead this coalition of Mamluks, this council of Mamluks, you could call it, and he sits in Baghdad. They considered Izzeddin Aybak illegitimate and a murderer of his erstwhile owner, right? Because since Salah Ayyub died, Khwarezmians, as I mentioned, fled further west and became a nomadic Turkic people. That as nomadic Turkic people, they were accepted. And then from Constantinople, they were sold onwards to Egypt. And they become a very important part of ours. They take Jerusalem back, very similar to what we remember from the Christian side when they took Jerusalem in the First Crusade. The Khwarezmians slaughtered a large number of Christian monks. The Crusader states would not be able to mount an effective offense against the Ayyubid Sultanate. There's a question, did they massacre the Christians? What do you mean by purge? Yes, the Khwarezmians massacred a significant number of Christians and expelled a number of them from the city. We have to remember, he gave the Christians permission to freely leave the city, to ransom themselves, and allowed Christians to eventually